Boys has finally started feeling dangerous again. Episode 6 didn't just raise the stakes, it completely changed the balance of power in the entire series. And now, heading into episode 7, the penultimate episode of the whole show, it genuinely feels like nobody is safe anymore. Because Homelander may have finally achieved the one thing he's wanted since season 1, immortality. And that changes everything. This episode isn't just setting up another battle. It feels like the beginning of the end, the moment where every character's decisions finally come back to haunt them. And after rewatching the trailers, the dialogue clues, and the character setups from episode 6, I think there are several huge things hiding in plain sight. So let's break it all down. Here is The Boys Season 5, Episode 7, Theories Explained. And obviously, spoilers ahead. Homelander has become the thing he always wanted to be. One of the smartest things Episode 6 did was show that Homelander's biggest weakness was never physical. It was psychological. For years, he's lived with this constant fear underneath all the ego. Fear that somebody stronger exists. Fear that people secretly hate him. Fear that one day he'll age, weaken, and disappear. That's why he obsessed over love. That's why he obsessed over approval. That's why he constantly needed people kneeling before him. But now, that fear might be gone forever. The moment Soldier Boy handed him the V1, you could actually see the shift happen in Homelander's expression. It wasn't relief, it was transcendence. Like he finally believed he had become something beyond human, a god. And that's terrifying, because before this, Homelander still had limits. Even if nobody could stop him physically, there were still things he worried about. The virus, death, aging, Soldier Boy, Ryan rejecting him. But if V1 truly gives him immunity and immortality, then those restraints disappear completely. And honestly, that might make him more dangerous than he's ever been. The biggest misunderstanding about V1. There's been a huge fan theory spreading around that V1 might secretly depower Homelander instead of enhancing him, mainly because people noticed those strange flickers in his eyes during episode 6, and because Soldier Boy's radiation abilities have historically burned the V out of soups. But after looking closely at the trailers, I really don't think that's what's happening. In fact, I think the opposite is true. The show keeps framing V1 as the ultimate evolution of Compound Vi. Not a poison, not a trick, an ascension. And if the writers wanted Homelander weakened right now, they wouldn't spend an entire season building him into the final unstoppable force of the series. Instead, episode 7 feels like it's going to explore what happens when someone like Homelander no longer fears consequences. That's way scarier than simply losing his powers, because a powerless Homelander would suffer. An immortal Homelander conquers, and that distinction matters. Why Soldier Boy is already in danger. Ironically, the person who may have signed his own death warrant is Soldier Boy, because the moment he gave Homelander V1, he stopped being useful. And Homelander doesn't keep people around unless they serve him emotionally or strategically. What makes this more interesting is that Soldier Boy accidentally exposed his own value in episode 6. He proved he can still manipulate or drain V from another soup. That changes everything. Even if Homelander becomes immortal, Soldier Boy may still represent the only being capable of taking that away from him. And Homelander knows it. That line Soldier Boy said, "You don't deserve to live forever." That clearly affected him. Homelander remembers disrespect more than pain. And now there's a real possibility that episode 7 opens with Homelander immediately trying to neutralize Soldier Boy before he becomes a future threat. Not because he hates him, because he fears the possibility of losing what he just gained. That's how narcissists think. The moment they achieve perfection, anybody capable of taking it away becomes an enemy. So I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Homelander either attempts to kill Soldier Boy, locks him away again, or publicly betrays him to cement himself as the only god. And if that happens, it would perfectly mirror Homelander's entire character arc. He always wanted family, but every time he gets close to one, he destroys it. The Oval Office scene might be the beginning of his empire. One of the biggest clues from the trailers is Homelander standing inside the Oval Office. And honestly, I don't think he's visiting. I think he's taking over. This season has constantly blurred the line between celebrity power and political power, but episode 7 may finally erase the line completely. Because if Homelander now believes he's immortal, why would he continue answering to presidents? Why pretend anymore? He already sees humans as inferior. Now he may genuinely believe ruling them is his destiny. And this is where Ashley becomes very important. Ashley has survived mostly because she's useful. But if Homelander begins restructuring power around himself, government figures suddenly become liabilities, especially witnesses. especially people who know too much. And Ashley knows everything. So there's a very real possibility that episode 7 finally becomes the episode where her luck runs out. The Deep sending is secretly being set up. Honestly, The Deep may have one of the darkest endings in the entire show. Because unlike Homelander, The Deep desperately wants belonging. That's always been his core motivation. He wants love, acceptance, connection, and ironically, he's destroyed every place where he could have found it. The most important detail in episode 6 wasn't him killing Black Noir. It was the pipeline. That entire Alaska storyline feels like setup for his downfall. Jeremy the Fish's final words weren't random. The show made a point of emphasizing that the sea creatures know the Deep betrayed them, which means if the Deep escapes into the ocean after Homelander inevitably turns on him, he may discover the ocean no longer welcomes him. And honestly, that would be the perfect ending for his character, not dying at Homelander's hands, but dying rejected by the very creatures he claimed to love most. The ruler of the sea overthrown by the sea itself. It's tragic, pathetic, and weirdly poetic, which is exactly what The Boys does best. Why episode 7's title is extremely concerning. The title, The Frenchman, the Woman, and the Man Called Mother's Milk. That doesn't sound hopeful at all. It almost sounds like a eulogy, especially because The Boys has a history of using deceptively playful titles right before devastating episodes. And now that Homelander believes the virus can't hurt him anymore, there's nothing stopping him from actively hunting the boys himself. That changes the entire dynamic. Before, Homelander still played games. Now, I think he starts executing people, fast and brutal. The scariest part is that the boys are emotionally fractured right now, too. Butcher looks defeated, Frenchie is emotionally exhausted, MM is barely holding everything together, and when characters start emotionally collapsing in the boys, somebody usually dies. Butcher may finally become the monster. One of the most overlooked setups right now is the Legend, because episode 6 strangely spared him, and in this show, sparing characters usually means their real purpose comes later. Comic readers know there's a brutal moment involving Butcher and the Legend that the series still hasn't adapted, and I think episode 7 may finally pull the trigger on it. Why? Because Butcher is running out of humanity. Every season strips more of it away. And with Homelander now potentially unbeatable, Butcher may cross lines he never would have crossed before. That's the real tragedy of his character. He hates monsters so much that he slowly becomes one. And if the Legend dies by Butcher's hands, it wouldn't just be shock value. It would symbolize Butcher abandoning morality entirely. The real key to defeating Homelander. So how do they stop him now? Honestly, brute force probably isn't enough anymore, and I think the show knows that. That's why Sister Sage suddenly became the most important character in the story, because Sage leaving Homelander wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Remember, she intentionally sabotaged the V1 research before, meaning she may already know how to counter it. And I think there are 3 possible directions the show could go. Theory 1, Soldier Boy removes Homelander's powers. This is the most obvious possibility. Soldier Boy's abilities could still theoretically burn the V out of Homelander, but honestly, it feels too predictable, and The Boys usually avoids repeating the exact same finale structure twice. Season 3 already built towards Soldier Boy versus Homelander. Doing it again without a twist would feel repetitive, so while it's possible, I don't think it's the final answer. Have Theory 2. Sage creates a temporary V1. This theory makes way more sense to me. Sage may create a modified version of V1 that allows Butcher, Starlight, or even MM to temporarily reach Homelander's level. Not permanently, temporarily. And that matters because immortality would actually be horrifying for characters like Butcher and Annie. They don't want eternal life, especially Butcher. So if Sage creates a temporary variant, it allows them to fight Homelander without sacrificing their humanity forever. And dramatically, that's much more interesting, because then the final battle becomes a choice. How much of yourself are you willing to lose to stop evil? Theory 3. Ryan becomes the final weapon. This might be the direction the show has been quietly building toward the entire time. Ryan, because Ryan represents something Homelander never truly understood: choice. Homelander became a monster because he was raised without love. Ryan still has the chance to choose differently. And if Sage enhances Ryan with V1, he could become the only being powerful enough to challenge Homelander physically and emotionally. Because Homelander's true weakness has always been Ryan's opinion of him, not lasers, not weapons, not the virus. Ryan rejecting him completely could psychologically destroy him, and if that emotional collapse happens during a physical confrontation, that may finally create the opening the boys need. the most important thing episode 7 needs to do. I actually don't think episode 7 will contain the final battle. Instead, I think this episode is going to be about transformation. Homelander transforming into a tyrant, Butcher transforming into a monster, Ryan transforming into a weapon, and the boys transforming from survivors into people willing to sacrifice everything. Because once episode 7 ends, there's only one episode left. No more setup, no more politics, no more pretending, just war. And honestly, that's exactly how the boys should end.